So the average high performer today, they spend like 40 hours a week obsessively optimizing their software.
Easily, yeah.
Right. Like they are building these immaculate dashboards, tweaking their notification settings, color coding their calendars. But if you look inside at their actual lived experience, their own brain is operating like a 5-year-old smartphone.
Wow. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
It's just, it's stuck on 1% battery. It has like 50 background apps running simultaneously, and it's just moments away from a total catastrophic system crash.
It is a massive and honestly incredibly common paradox. I mean, we treat our technology and our external tools with like infinitely more care and precision than we treat our own cognitive load.
Totally.
We're so obsessed with upgrading our apps, but we just completely ignore the operating system running inside our own skulls.
And that paradox is exactly what we are unpacking for you today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We have a completely unique mission for you on this one.
We really do.
We took this stack of sources that you would normally never see in the same room. I mean, we've got advanced digital automation tutorials for platforms like Notion and Zapier.
Which is super technical stuff.
Super technical. And we smashed them together with like cutting-edge psychological research on mental fitness and burnout for entrepreneurs.
Which, might sound like a bizarre combination at first glance.
Right.
But as we dig into these sources, it becomes really clear that it is a vital one. The mission here is to explore how true high performers actually manage to avoid burnout. And the secret is that they do it by fixing both their internal hardware, meaning the neurobiology of their brains, and their external software, like their digital systems.
So we're going to take you on a journey that starts with the raw neuroscience of emotional reactivity. And we are going to travel all the way down into the technical weeds of writing custom JavaScript to bypass API limitations.
Yeah, we're really going there.
Because, as these sources reveal, achieving mental clarity and building a perfectly tuned productivity system are actually the exact same pursuit. You cannot have one without the other.
Exactly. But before we can even think about building this unshakable digital system, we absolutely have to fix the human operator.
Right, the person behind the screen.
Yeah, we have to start with that crushing mental load that causes, learners, creators, and entrepreneurs to burn out in the first place. I mean, if the operator is compromised, no amount of software automation is going to save them.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through the psychological sources, I kept coming back to that smartphone analogy. When you think about a burnt-out brain, you've got, anxiety about a client email sitting open in the background. You've got guilt about missing a family dinner, draining your energy, maybe some lingering stress over a website server crash.
All running at the same time.
Exactly. These mental background apps are just chewing through your processing power. So how do we actually force quit those background processes so we can finally upgrade our internal operating system?
Well, to understand how to force quit them, we have to look at the neuroscience of what is actually happening during that crash.
Okay.
When those background apps overwhelm your processing capacity, your brain undergoes a physical shift. Your amygdala basically takes over.
And the amygdala,
It's the ancient evolutionary center for fear, stress, and emotional reactivity. And when the amygdala senses that you are overwhelmed, it doesn't just send out a warning signal, it literally hijacks your prefrontal cortex.
Wait, and the prefrontal cortex is the logic center, right? Like that's where irrational thought lives.
Exactly. It's your logic center, your creative problem-solving center, and the seat of your emotional maturity.
Wow.
So when the amygdala hijacks it, you literally lose access to your highest cognitive functions. Your vision narrows, you lose nuance, you're plunged into pure biological survival mode.
So you're reacting to an unread email the same way your ancestors would react to, like a predator in the brush.
Yes, which totally explains why, when we are stressed, we make terrible business decisions.
That makes so much sense. But the psychological research in our stack introduces this framework called positive intelligence, right?
Yeah, positive intelligence. And it relies entirely on neuroplasticity.
Which is the brain's physical ability to rewire its own neural pathways through repetition.
Right, and they have a very specific mechanism for force quitting the amygdala. They call it PQ reps.
PQ reps?
Yeah, and the elegance of the PQ rep is in its brevity. I mean, we were talking about 10 seconds. That is all a single rep takes. takes
10 seconds, that's it.
That's it. It is a 10-second, intensely focused mental exercise designed specifically to build what the researchers call your self-command muscle. You can do them with your eyes open or closed, like in the middle of a meeting or while you're driving.
I actually want to make this concrete for you listening right now. If you're commuting, or maybe just walking your dog while listening to this, you can actually do one of these right now.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources describe tactile observation as a primary PQ rep. You literally just take your thumb and your forefinger and you rub them together with such intense microscopic focus that you can actually feel the individual ridges of your fingerprints rubbing against each other.
Yeah, and that intense focus on a physical sensation forces your brain to shift energy away from the amygdala's fear response.
It just cuts it off.
Right, and it channels that energy back into the sensory processing areas, which basically re-engages the prefrontal cortex. It sounds almost, aggressively simple, but the real-world application is profound.
Well, the sources detailed a really compelling case study about a tech startup founder named Samantha to illustrate this.
Oh, Samantha's story is the perfect example of this in action.
Yeah, so her business was right on the brink of securing this massive round of funding, like a total breakthrough moment.
Huge deal for her.
Right. And suddenly, right before the finish line, a cascade of severe technical setbacks hit her platform. It threatened to derail the entire funding round. I mean, it was the ultimate recipe for an amygdala hijack.
Totally. And in the past, psychologists note that a situation like that would trigger what they call emotional fusion.
Emotional fusion.
Yeah, it's this terrifying state where you become so deeply entangled in your own emotional reaction that you lose the ability to separate your core identity from the crisis.
Oh, wow.
You stop thinking, my business is experiencing a panic-inducing problem, and you simply become the panic. The stress becomes your entire reality.
But because Samantha had been practicing these 10-second PQ reps, her response was entirely different.
Exactly.
The moment the crisis hit and she felt that familiar spike of adrenaline and doom, she didn't react. She paused. She used that exact tactile focus technique, literally grounding herself physically for 10 seconds. And by doing that, she processed the severity of the crisis without falling into emotional fusion. She retained her logic. She systematically addressed the technical setbacks and secured her funding simply because she knew how to force quit her amygdala.
Which is just incredible, and that is the true power of internal hardware optimization. But this brings us to a massive realization. Once you develop that self-command and your prefrontal cortex is back online, you immediately recognize a harsh truth. Human memory and raw willpower are incredibly fragile.
Oh yeah, they run out so fast.
Right. You just cannot rely on them to sustain that calm long term. Willpower naturally depletes over the course of a day.
So once the mind is calm, we have to protect it. And we protect it by offloading that cognitive burden entirely. We move from the internal hardware to the external software. We have to build what the sources call a digital exoskeleton.
A digital exoskeleton, yes. It's basically a system of interconnected tools that holds your data, your tasks, and your processes so your brain doesn't have to.
So we're looking at platforms like Notion, Workflowy, and Collected Notes.
Exactly. And building this exoskeleton is no longer just a fun hobby for productivity nerds. I mean, the data we pulled shows that 87% of Forbes Cloud 100 companies are currently using Zapier to automate their busy work.
87%.
Yeah, it is a structural necessity for modern high performance.
And Notion really seems to act as the central nervous system for this exoskeleton. The sources dive into how Notion uses a service called iFramely, which is absolutely wild.
This is so cool.
iFramely allows users to embed content from over 1,900 different domains directly into a Notion page.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about dropping a static hyperlink either.
No, it's way more dynamic.
Right, you can embed a live Google Drive document, a Slack thread, a Zoom link, or an entire interactive Miro whiteboard, and it all just lives and breathes inside your central hub.
Because centralization is the absolute key to reducing cognitive load. Every time you have to switch tabs or open a new app to find a piece of information, you are spending mental energy. The sources also highlighted a massive update in an outlining app called Workflowy, spearheaded by Jesse Patel, that takes this concept even further.
I love this detail. Workflowy is fundamentally a list-making app, but they introduced the ability to embed shared lists from entirely different collaborators directly into your own personal account.
Right.
These embedded lists sit right at your home level. And to make sure you know it's a shared portal, the lists literally glow with this special blue aura.
A blue aura, yeah.
And the best part is that they update in near real time. So your collaborator changes a bullet point on their end, and you see it instantly on yours without ever leaving your workflow.
It's seamless.
But wait a second, I have to push back on this entire premise.
Okay, go for it.
I am listening to this, and I am thinking, doesn't setting up all these webhooks, hunting for blue aura embeds, and syncing thousands of different applications just create a massive amount of new cognitive load?
That's a fair point.
Right. Aren't we basically just trading our emotional stress over our work for, like, the endless IT troubleshooting of our tools?
That is a phenomenal question, and honestly, it is the exact trap that most people fall into when trying to get organized. They build these incredibly complex, fragile systems that require constant, exhausting maintenance.
Exactly.
But the true goal of a digital exoskeleton is not to interact with more apps. The goal is to build invisible processes.
Invisible processes.
Yes, a truly perfected exoskeleton requires absolute zero thought to operate once it is built. And that concept leads us directly into the magic of instant webhooks.
Well, this is where the tech side gets really fascinating, particularly the video source from feature. You can literally watch your mind being blown in real time by Notion's new webhook button capability.
It's a great video.
But before we get to his buttons, we need to clarify what a webhook actually is, because the difference between a webhook and the old way of doing things is massive.
It really is. So the old way of doing things is a process called polling. Before webhooks were widely adopted, if you wanted Notion to trigger an action in another app, your automation software had to rely on polling.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It would basically check your Notion database every 15 minutes, or sometimes wait hours on lower tier plans, just to see if anything had changed.
So polling is essentially like a kid in the backseat of a car constantly asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Every 15 minutes.
Perfect analogy.
It's exhausting, it wastes resources, and it is terribly inefficient. A webhook, on the other hand, is like the car's GPS, calmly and instantly announcing, you have arrived.
Exactly.
It is a proactive, instant notification. The moment a change happens, the webhook fires the data out immediately.
Right. And Dimitri Panici demonstrated how you can now attach these instant webhooks to native clickable buttons right inside a Notion page, linking them directly to an automation platform like make.com.
Okay, wow.
He showed a content creation workflow that perfectly illustrates the invisible process.
Let's walk through that example.
Yeah.
So Dimitri is sitting in a meeting note, taking normal notes. When the meeting ends, he doesn't open his calendar app, he doesn't open his task manager. He just clicks a single button on the page that says, add content to calendar. In a fraction of a second, the webhook fires. It automatically grabs the specific client data from that exact meeting note. It generates all the necessary subtasks on his master content calendar, and it mathematically sets a due date exactly 5 days out from today, instantly.
Which is amazing. Now, connect that back to what we discussed in section 1 about the amygdala.
Oh, right.
Why is that single click so profoundly important for mental fitness? Because Dimitri never has to switch tabs, and more importantly, he never has to open his email inbox to coordinate the task.
Oh, that's huge.
By keeping him out of his inbox, the automation actively prevents the trap of accidentally reading a stressful, unrelated email while he is just trying to schedule a meeting.
Wow.
This invisible process isn't just saving him 3 seconds of clicking, it is literally protecting him from a potential amygdala hijack.
That is an incredible connection. The automation is a shield for the internal hardware.
Yeah.
And his invoicing example was even more powerful.
Yes, the invoicing one is great.
He built a Notion dashboard with 3 simple buttons: send invoice, remind, and void. He presses send, and make.com instantly grabs the client data, connects directly to Stripe or PayPal in the background, generates the actual financial invoice, and immediately updates his Notion page status to say, payment requested for $200 billed to Jake Browning, due in 5 days, all from one click.
And the void button handles the messy reality of human error.
Right.
If a mistake is made on the invoice, pressing void triggers an automation that nullifies the invoice ID and destroys the URL instantly, wiping the slate clean across all the integrated financial platforms without him ever having to log into Stripe.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I am looking at this instant button magic, and honestly, as a non-coder, it is deeply intimidating.
I hear that a lot.
I love the idea of an invisible process, but if I don't know how to write an API call or program a webhook from scratch, am I just locked out of this level of mental freedom?
Absolutely not. not. That is the beauty of no-code platforms like Zapier and Make.com. They are highly accessible, visual, drag-and-drop builders designed specifically for non-code users. You don't need to know syntax to build these basic bridges. However, to achieve ultimate mental freedom, you will eventually hit bottlenecks.
Right.
Sometimes these platforms have strict native limitations where two apps just flat out refuse to talk to each other. Achieving a flawless exoskeleton means knowing how to bypass those walls.
Which brings us to the final, most technical piece of our deep dive. William Nutt's incredibly clever workaround for a very stubborn Zapier limitation.
This is such a cool workaround.
For a long time, Zapier has had this persistent inability to natively update what Notion calls relation properties inside a database.
Yeah.
So imagine you have a database of individual contacts and a separate database of companies. In Notion, you can link them together with a relation property. But historically, Zapier couldn't automate that link.
It was a massive pain point for thousands of users. But William Nutt engineered a brilliant 4-step Zap scenario to hack right through this limitation. Let's trace the journey of the data through his architecture.
Okay.
Step 1. A client submits a contact form on your website. That form sends a webhook into Zapier containing 2 pieces of text, a full name and a country.
Okay, simple enough. The data enters the system.
Step 2. Zapier uses its standard, easy-to-use integration to create a brand new line item in your Notion submissions database. It effortlessly populates the full name text.
Right.
But when it looks at the country relation property, it hits that brick wall. It leaves it blank because it doesn't speak that specific database language natively. So step 3. To prepare for the workaround, Zapier runs a search function through your separate Notion countries database to find the exact unique page ID for the country that was submitted in the form.
And here comes the magic step. Step 4. Because Zapier's native system is blocked, William Nutt uses a feature called the Code by Zapier action. He runs a custom JavaScript PADI-CH request directly into the Notion API. To do this, he uses something called an internal integration token to securely bypass Zapier's normal limits and forcefully command Notion to relate the 2 pages.
I know JavaScript PADI-CH request sounds incredibly dense.
Oh, totally. To summarize this for anyone whose eye is just completely glazed over, think of Zapier's native system like your standard morning commute. Finding out Zapier can't update a relation property is like driving around a bend and realizing the main bridge on your route is completely washed out.
Yeah.
The road just ends. The bouncer won't let you through.
And William Nutt's custom JavaScript.
The JavaScript is like a VIP all-access pass. That internal integration token is essentially a briefcase full of clearance codes.
I love that.
It allows you to bypass the bouncer at the broken bridge, pull out a highly customized, slightly terrifying zip line, and shoot your data directly across the canyon into Notion's backend. It looks intensely intimidating from the edge of the cliff, but it gets your data safely across the gap.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. It bypasses the standard UI entirely. But the most important reality here is that you do not have to build that zipline yourself.
Thank goodness.
The sources offer a really touching look into the community forums where people are troubleshooting these exact workarounds together. You aren't alone in the dark.
Right.
For instance, a user named Aurora was in the forums pointing out that while William Nutt's code is fantastic, it doesn't fix every single edge case limitation. It requires tweaking.
Right, and then you have the deeply relatable struggle of a user named Flow Movement.
Oh, yeah.
They posted in absolute despair because they copy-pasted the code and it completely broke. They kept getting a syntax error. And isn't that just the universal maddening experience of trying to code?
It absolutely is.
Flow Movement was losing their mind over a broken digital exoskeleton. And after hours of pulling their hair out, it turned out the error was caused by a single missing backtick and a forgotten $sign right next to the word bearer in their authorization code.
Oh, that hurts to hear.
One tiny microscopic keystroke brought the entire automated zipline crashing down.
It is incredibly frustrating. But what is so encouraging is watching how the community steps in to catch each other. When another user was struggling with a failing Zap, 2 community members, Sam and Jibido, jumped into the thread to help troubleshoot.
Oh, that's awesome.
They quickly figured out that the Zap was failing because the user's Notion integration token was only connected to a subpage rather than the parent page of the entire workspace.
Okay.
Once they guided the user to establish the connection at the parent level, the zipline worked flawlessly.
It really highlights that building this unshakable digital system is a deeply collaborative human effort. You do not have to be a genius software engineer to achieve this level of optimization.
Not at all.
willing to engage with the community, ask questions, and borrow the zip lines that other people have already built to the test.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle. It forces us to ask the foundational question.
Yeah.
Why do we go to these lengths? Why do we spend hours troubleshooting JavaScript workarounds and organizing Blue Aura workflowy lists and building instant billing buttons to invoice Jake Browning?
Well, we do it because we are trying to save ourselves. We automate the mundane, repetitive data entry, specifically so we have the mental capacity left over for emotional maturity, for creative problem solving, and for genuine human connection.
Exactly.
We are clearing out the digital clutter so that our internal hardware isn't constantly redlining at 1% battery.
That is the ultimate synthesis of these sources. We quiet the amygdala with those 10-second tactile PQ reps. We centralize the chaos of our projects with smart iframely embeds. We automate the friction of our daily tasks with instant webhooks. But synthesizing all of this raises one final, incredibly important question.
Let's hear it.
It's a question that builds on everything we've discussed today, and it is something everyone optimizing their life eventually has to face. If we use all of this brilliant collaborative technology to successfully automate 80% of our daily friction, what do we actually do with the silence that is left over? When the busy work is gone, does building a perfectly optimized digital life actually force us to finally sit alone with our own thoughts? And the real challenge we are left with is, are we truly mentally fit enough to handle that kind of quiet?
Wow. That really is the ultimate test, isn't it?
It really is.
You spend all this time learning to force quit all those background apps on your internal smartphone. The battery is finally full, the screen is totally clear of notifications, but now you actually have to look at your own reflection in the dark glass.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We are going to leave you to sit with the quiet.